Okay. Hi, everybody. I am here at the home of a friend of mine, Christine Jens, who is a fellow Bikram yoga practitioner. And Christine and I actually met at yoga and struck up a conversation one day in the locker room. And I just really had no idea what was going to come of that, seemingly innocent conversation that we were having. But Christine told me the most remarkable story. And I want her to share it with everybody here. So, Christine, what you were explaining, and we talked about in our many conversations about the fact that we're most of us, or all of us probably, are going through our own journeys, and probably very unaware of, or we don't have a handle on what's going on in our lives, don't understand why.
Right.
And your own journey culminated and then unfolded quite remarkably with something very tragic that happened in your life. And so I would love for you to tell everybody here what that was that happened, and then maybe
expand on that.
Expand on that. That would be a great idea. So I'm going to let Christine do that right now.
Yes, I love telling this story because it's a really very unique experience, and as we're finding out, more and more people are having these and are writing about them. The bookstores are starting to fill up about people who have had spiritual experiences, or at least certain interaction with a higher octave in consciousness, and have lived to tell about it, and I'm always fascinated by these stories. My own began 20 years ago when I was working out I was on a business trip out west. I worked at the time as an engineer for a large firm who was involved in maintenance applications in nuclear power plants. Anyways, we were on a business trip, and near the end of the trip, just about on our way, a day or so before we were going to go home, we all went out for our usual finale dinner, and it was actually quite low-key. Sometimes they can get pretty rowdy, but this one was pretty low-key. And interestingly enough, on the way home, the driver fell asleep, and the car that I was in, I was a front seat passenger, and I recall as I got in the car, looking at the seatbelt, thinking, I don't need that, I'm too tired, I just want to lie down and curl up and go to sleep. It was about midnight, and we were exhausted from working long hours. So, none to say, apparently the driver fell asleep, and the car drove off the road while going around a curve, and ended up rolling through a cornfield. Fortunately, there was a fellow in the back of the seat of the car who was ambulatory enough that he could get out and go to the nearest farmhouse and get medical help. Well, while this was happening, I was lying face down in the mud, in the corn stalks, unable to move, and really at the time not even aware of what was happening. They did get us medical attention, and I went to the closest hospital where the emergency staff recognized right away that it was a spinal cord injury and that I needed much more sophisticated help. So I got flown to St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, and then proceeded to spend another 5 or 6 months there recuperating. But while I was there, I was put in intensive care, and I was there for about 2 weeks. And initially they thought that I was going to die, and all the vital signs, I guess, pointed that way. So they had my family flown in for last rites, and apparently my family, I'm one of 6 kids, and several of my closest girlfriends came out too. Apparently they had had numerous meetings with the doctors, and the doctors were telling them that if I did live, I would never walk again, that this was very severe. There was no, on all their readings and whatnot, there was absolutely no indication that I would walk again. And to my family, of course, and knowing the type of person I was, which was very athletic and outgoing at the time, they thought this would be pretty devastating news if I did live. But they all made a pact when they were in this meeting, and they decided that whenever they came in to see me in intensive care, that they would not be crying, and that they'd put on the best face that they possibly could. So while I'm in intensive care and just listening to the bleeps of the computer sounds in and around me day and night, as my family would come in and see me, I couldn't talk to them because I had stuff in my mouth, all kinds of, I was on air respirating systems and all kinds of things that were life-supporting and sustaining me to keep me alive. So we weren't in a position where we could communicate, but other than just our eyes. So I would see them one at a time come in, and they would always be smiling. And no tears or no crying, so on the inside of me I would think, hey, I'm not that bad off. You know, I can get out of this one. And God bless them for doing that, because I maintained that mindset throughout the whole recovery period. And my family has really been my strength and tremendous support system, because they never, ever doubted nor commented or repeated what the doctor said, that I would never walk again. They kept very quiet on that and just watched and waited and supported me.
And if they hadn't, like, your initial reaction or your initial idea or feeling was based on that.
Was absolutely.
So that's huge.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, that you had a positive
Very
influence on you
positive
from the very
influence.
beginning.
Yeah. And that was really my foundation for, and the cornerstone of my recovery. I fell back on that many times. And likewise, they were always there. They never said you couldn't do it. They never said you can do it. They just were there. This was also very sedating, of course, and you're drifting in and out of consciousness, and almost for, I think it took me almost a week or so to even come out of, to be even aware that they were even there. So I was in there for another week, becoming more and more alert and awake, and the hospital asked me if I wanted to do rehab there, and I immediately said yes. I was in traction with 2 bolts in my head. I was wearing an apparatus called the Halo, where it's a steel rim. It's basically a piece of round circular steel that goes around your head, and they bolt it right into your head, two points here and 2 points in the back. And from that, then they have these steel bars coming down, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and they put you in what they call a body cast, and that keeps your neck rigid, so you know, not that I could move a whole lot at the time, but they...
Just in case, right?
Just in case, it kept everything rigid, so that if you did gain mobility, your neck would be rigid, but you could still be upright. I guess it was a way of allowing you to be upright.
It's interesting they call it the Halo.
Yes, yeah. So at the latter part of the stay in the intensive care, which lasted about 2 weeks, I was able to, they were able to sit me up, maybe about 30 degrees and wheel me around in a wheelchair. And I'd last maybe 5-10 minutes in that position and want to get back into bed. It was pretty dizzy, you know, it was not a comfortable experience. But it also made me realize I was starting to come out of the shock factor and realize, oh my God, what am I in? But still recalling that no one said you'd never walk again. So I knew there was hope, and I hung on to that. That was my anchor. So while I was there, though, they set you up with a team of occupational therapists and physical therapists and recreational therapists, and they really do a good job of trying to help you through the different stages as you're coming out of your, I guess, shock phase and realizing what you're into. Although for me it never really sunk in because I always felt I would walk again, and kept that as my main motivator, and looked towards therapy as a way to regain my mobility.
So you're still paralyzed
I'm
at this
totally
point.
paralyzed. Couldn't move a thing.
They haven't told you anything
They
yet
have
either.
not told me.
Good thing.
Good thing. And
This
there was
is a
no
good
mirrors
thing.
around. There was no mirrors around.
Oh, okay.
Very good thing. Because by this time, my body had atrophied to nothing. You know, I used to be very athletic and muscular and looking in good shape kind of thing. And I'm sure if I had looked in a mirror, although months later, you know, you're asking, can you have a mirror? And they would not give you one. So, and I realize now why. Because it is quite a shock to see yourself. When I finally did look myself into the mirror, it was quite a shock to see yourself very thin. And so during the day it was busy. You know, everything was scheduled, as I said. There was, breakfast was from a certain time, and then you got dressed, and then you went to therapy for a certain time. Then you came out of that for a 15 to 20 minute break in your room. Then you were into another physical therapy or occupational therapy, one or the other. Then you come out of that, then you're in your lunch hour, then you got an hour off, then you're back doing some sort of aerobic, wheelchair aerobic or whatever. They had, they kept you busy through the whole day. 5 o'clock comes around, dinner time again, from 6 to 7. They had something else, either they were showing a movie or you chat with the other patients or whatever, and you were busy. So by the time you went to bed, or they got you ready for bed, which is about 9 o'clock, you're tired.
That's got to be an understatement for what you were going through.
Right.
Right.
But it kept your mind off of what you were in. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's what it did for me. Mm-hmm. And I was used to a busy schedule. Mm-hmm. So if I fitted into it like it was an everyday thing, mm-hmm. It was, it was great for me.
You would have gone nuts if you were just lying in bed all day.
I would have gone nuts.
Right.
And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But anyway, so by the end of the day, by 9 o'clock, you're ready. You're ready to, you're like, oh, yeah. And it would be quiet. The main staff of the hospital would be gone. All your visitors would be gone. The quiet of the hospital would move in. It would just be, I guess, a skeleton staff on in the evening, or just be like a night watch nurse or two, and things were quiet in the hospital, and you could really feel the stillness. It was really very peaceful, and I looked forward to going to bed, and I always had, even as a youngster, because I would always be able to go off into a place that was my favorite spot. Mm-hmm. So even as a youngster, when I was young, I was an avid skier. And I would just go off, and I'd see myself skiing down these hills and mountains and all kinds of things like that, and I would just have a great time. In the summertime, I loved the water, I loved the sunsets, I loved sailing, I loved any aspect about the water, so there was some, and I would do that again as a kid, just go off into these beautiful areas with beaches and just walk a beach at night and watch the sunset fall down. So I had a long momentum of this, and in the hospital, I would look forward to night. There'd be no one to talk to. I could finally be quiet and by myself. And while I was in this wonderful space, I started to have this really unique experience. And it would start off like the universe would just open up. And it would be just like I'm looking at the stars. And it would be like night, just like any other night. As a kid, looking outside, lying on the grass, looking up, and seeing all these stars. Except now I'm in the in a hospital bed in a hospital, and I'd be looking at these stars, and I would see this light come straight down. This pencil thin light, ray light, come right down into the top of my head, and I watch it. I watch it go all the way down, and I watch this night after night. Watching this light that was silent, there was no noise, it was just quietly going. Sometimes I'd be out of my body looking at it. I would see it, sometimes I'd be right in the cell looking at it, and I'd see it going from cell to cell to cell. Sometimes I'd be outside of the spine looking, I'd be in the body but outside of the spine. I mean, it was just all these different angles that I'd be at. It was really, and it was mesmerizing. I would just watch it. But I knew if this light went all the way down to my feet, I knew I would walk again. And I kept this information quiet to myself. And then I would start to move my toes. But not knowing whether my toes were moving or not, I finally told my sister, I didn't tell her about the light, but I told her I was working on. And, when you're in a condition like this, you've got all night to work on one little tiny thing. And my effort was to move my toes. I knew if I could move my toes, move my feet, I would walk again. I knew that without any hesitation. No one could sway me from that at all.